Wise lions, foolish frogs, and talkative turtles. They are among the many stars of Panchatantra, the ancient Indian text. It was composed in Sanskrit around 200 BCE. Panchatantra is a vast collection of animal fables. It is India's cultural gift to the world, and it has shaped minds for generations. But it has also revealed something profound. Wildlife has always held a special place in the Indian society. India is nature's wonderland, a breathtaking cradle of biodiversity, home to about 8% of all known species, including 91,000 types of animals. And from sacred stories of the ancient past to the many hurdles of the colonial period to modern-day scientific conservation, complete with challenges and great strides, India's unwavering commitment to protect the wilderness runs deep. A society without rules often falls into chaos, and most of us live with this belief. But when it comes to conservation, we don't always follow it. Despite a dearth of policies or actionables, wildlife flourished in ancient India. We saw this during the Vedic period, when animals were not considered mere beings, they were revered as teachers and even as gods. Animals were protected because they were respected. As time passed, society became more structured, more laws came into place, and regulated conservation gained popularity. We see this in the Arthashastra. This text was written by Kautilya during the Mauryan period. Yes, hunting was a prominent feature of the time. It was a sport, a royal duty, and at times a ritualistic compulsion. But the Mauryas were also strict about wildlife protection. There were fines for harming animals within protected areas. King Ashok made noteworthy contributions as well. He issued several pillars establishing administrative policies. In the 3rd century BC, he introduced the 5th pillar. It focused on wildlife protection. This was the first documented conservation law in India. It prohibited the killing of certain animals. It spoke about animal rights and the protection of environment. After this, whether it was the Golden Period or the Mughal period, in many ways, pre-colonial India laid the foundation of modern wildlife initiatives. People understood and prioritized the preservation of wildlife. Fables, scriptures, religious norms, even children's games highlighted all of this. And India was teeming with birds and animals. But then came the invaders, the British colonizers, with their big guns, their hunger for more land and more trophies. And they took to hunting in a big way. When they weren't busy laying waste to India, officers took leave to hunt, and princely states obliged. By the 19th century, anger was bubbling. To combat this, the colonizers brought in new laws. They devised selective conservation. They protected the wildlife that was important to them, like elephants, because elephants helped with labor. They could be used on the battlefield. They created wealth for the British, so they were protected. But the British continued to relentlessly exterminate tigers. Take the Madras Presidency, for example. In today's context, this included Tamil Nadu, parts of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and Odisha. Back in the day, Madras was also called Puliyar, meaning land of tigers. But during the colonial period, these tigers became trophies. And reports say Madras was divested of every single one of them. In fact, during the 50-year period between 1875 and 1925, more than 80,000 tigers were killed across India. That's not all. In the last 2 centuries, India lost about 90% of its leopard population. And in 1952, the Indian cheetah was officially declared extinct. So in the 20th century, backlash grew. Activists and journalists were on the front lines of this fight. The number of disillusioned British hunters also grew. Some of them became naturalists. This included the Anglo-Indian hunter Edward James Corbett, or Jim Corbett. He was born in Nainital. He hunted and explored jungles in childhood. But over time, he saw the environmental destruction that the colonizers left in their wake. So he lobbied the British rulers, along with many Indians. And in 1935 came a major shift. Protected areas were created for the wildlife, like national parks and sanctuaries. India's first national park was established the following year in the Himalayan foothills of Uttarakhand. to focus on the conservation of tigers. It was called Haley National Park and was later renamed Jim Corbett National Park to honor the naturalist. This spurred a series of positive changes led by concerned citizens who rode this wave into the independence movement. Then came August 15, 1947. After centuries of colonial rule, Indians were ready to chart their own course. And despite the massive setbacks to its wildlife and economy, India showcased the phenomenal ability to bounce back. The post-colonial era witnessed big changes both in terms of conservation attitudes and policies. In the early days, there was no immediate policy framework. But the planning went on. The three organs of the government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, they all did their part. At the same time, a catastrophe was also brewing. Hunting, poaching, and wildlife trade was still rampant. Tiger, leopard, and snake skins were being sold for foreign currency. The advent of modern technology only hastened this process. So in the early 1950s, a series of acts were introduced, specifically to protect rhinos and elephants. In the late 60s came the golden era of India's wildlife conservation. New Delhi flagged the dire status of India's wildlife, and in the 1970s came the Wildlife Protection Act. This heralded a new dawn. It established protected areas and wildlife reserves, and to this day, this is the sole legislation protecting all wild animals and birds in India, enforced by the Constitution. Then in 1973, Project Tiger was launched. First, because tigers were in a dire state thanks to the British colonizers, and secondly, because of the broad philosophy. The idea was that if the tiger can be saved as the head of the ecosystem, then the hierarchy of the animal kingdom is maintained. If that happens, then there was hope for smaller creatures as well. This thought process was a major milestone in India's conservation efforts, and the policymakers walked the talk. It was the first director of Project Tiger who said, "The tiger cannot be preserved in isolation." His name was Kailash Sankla, and he did something radical. To keep the tigers safe, the project did not isolate them. Instead, the tigers remained in their natural habitat, and it was the habitat that was protected. These areas were made human-free. So the tigers were secure, and this turned the tide for tiger conservation. As for Kailash Sankla, he came to be known as the Tiger Man of India. Around the same time, several other wildlife heroes were also making moves, like Jamal Ara, often called India's first bird woman. She was a research pioneer. When she was not on the quest to find exotic birds, she could be found talking about them on the All India radio. Then we had S.P. Shahi, a legendary forest officer, one of the key architects of the wildlife resurrection of the 1970s, and perhaps the first Indian conservationist to raise an alarm about the dire state of wolves. This gave him the title of Wolfman. So in different parts of the country, hundreds of conservationists persisted, and thanks to their efforts, India covered a lot of ground. Eventually, the focus shifted towards research and the development of better, smarter techniques. About a decade later, in 1982, the Wildlife Institute of India was established. This was to boost research. The next year, India came up with an action plan, the National Wildlife Action Plan. It provided a roadmap for conservation. It boosted coordinated efforts at the central and state levels. It's been more than half a century since India adopted this action plan. The progress has been stupendous, but challenges persist. With mining, agricultural expansion, and urbanization, the human-animal conflict has intensified. Although poaching and illegal trade have reduced, they've not been eliminated. Sometimes the lack of funds also hampers efforts. But India has stayed the course when it comes to conservation, and in recent years, we've seen a renewed push. In 2017, India updated its action plan, building on previous experiences, making plans for the future until 2031. Now, the focus is not just on conservation, but also the involvement of the community. Plus, we are fighting climate change. It is hurting ecosystems and destroying natural habitats. India is allocating more funds to deal with this. This year, more than 3,400 crore rupees have been allocated for conservation. That's 9% more than last year. India has also launched a number of ambitious conservation projects, like Project Dolphin and Project Cheetah. Remember, we just said that cheetahs became extinct because of rampant hunting. Now there is a landmark effort to bring them back. In 2022, 8 cheetahs were brought from Namibia, and in 2023, 12 cheetahs came from South Africa. Official reports say most of them have adapted well. And in 2023, a female cheetah gave birth to cubs on Indian soil. This was a first in 75 years, and it was a major win for India's conservation push. Plus, Project Tiger has expanded. India now has 54 tiger reserves. It is home to more than 70% of the world's tiger population. Then we have Project Elephant. India has 33 elephant reserves and is home to over 60% of the global Asian elephant population. Or take the case of the Asiatic lion. This lion species lives only in the Indian state of Gujarat. It was once on the brink of extinction, but over the past few years, it has seen consistent population growth. So yes, like with any conservation effort in any country, there are challenges. But since independence, India has dramatically improved the wildlife landscape. Today, there are more than 1,000 protected areas in the country, with about 600 sanctuaries and more than 100 national parks. India is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, and it continues to protect these ecosystems. India's wildlife story is one of resilience, a testament to how deeply nature is woven into the fabric of its identity. From ancient fables to modern-day science, from colonial challenges to post-independence revival, the journey has been long and complex, also inspiring. Conserving wildlife has not just been about saving animals, it's also about preserving heritage, sustaining livelihoods, and securing the future of the country. So as India steps into tomorrow, the wise lions, the foolish frogs, and the talkative turtles continue to inspire us. And the call to protect our wildlife has never been stronger.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上の
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.